No. You do not have to get on an airplane and go somewhere super far away with your Osprey backpack to call it traveling, right?
Hey everyone, my name is Sarah. Welcome to Friendly Faces, Amazing Places, a podcast where each week I share stories from real people I've met while traveling. Everything from horror stories to inspiring adventures to insightful tips and advice. So sit back, fasten your seatbelt, and come explore the world with me and my friends. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Friendly Faces, Amazing Places with your host, Sarita. I don't know about all of you, but I am getting really sick and tired of editing this podcast. And I don't mean that because I'm bored of my guests or of the podcast. I am just so excited to get out there and go to all these places that I'm hearing about on this podcast. And it sucks that we're all stuck inside right now. On the other hand, I have found these conversations really amazing because I'm filled with gratitude for the time I have spent traveling and the time that my guests have spent traveling. The thing I've learned more than anything else so far in this podcast is that traveling really brings people together. No matter where you are in the world, what you've gone through, what kind of mishaps or horror stories you've endured, the good and positive memories always shine through and remind you what a great place it is out there. Before I get started with this episode, I wanted to let you guys know that I am open for audience-suggested questions. This is a podcast that's meant to be a sharing of stories and also to help you learn how to travel, what you want to see from the world, etc. I try really hard to ask all the questions that I think are essential to each specific guest's appearance on the show, but if you guys want to ask anything about me, about travel, about the guests, please send them in to me. You can message me on Instagram at Friendly Faces Podcast, or on Facebook, Friendly Faces Amazing Places Podcast, or just send me an email, friendlyfacespodcast@gmail.com. I had so much fun editing this week's episode. My guest is Olivia, and she is an amazing conversationalist. She's really an extrovert. She loves to talk to people, and that's a big part of how she travels. She's eager to have conversations about cultural differences, even if they're uncomfortable. And she's also really excited to share the beauty of the world with everyone. Sending you a lot of positive energy with this episode, so I hope you enjoy it, and please send me your questions. Bye, guys. Olivia, welcome to the podcast. Is it your first time on a podcast?
I believe it's actually my second time on a podcast.
We have a veteran.
I will not claim to be an expert at this, but I did participate in a very low budget one in college. So
wow.
I'm ready for my stardom now.
That's great. Awesome. Can you introduce yourself however you like?
Yeah, for sure. So my name's Olivia McKellar. I'm 23 years old. I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee, but I went to school in Boston. I went to Boston University, where I studied Spanish and teaching English as a second language. I graduated in May 2019, and like a lot of people who graduate from college, from undergrad, I didn't really know what I wanted to do next, so I had a job for the summer. Through that job, met some really interesting people who were born and raised in Colombia, in Bogota. So that's where I went in the fall.
So you're from Nashville, Tennessee. Can you recommend something to see there if people travel to your hometown?
The first thing that comes to mind is food related stuff.
Ooh.
I have found that people who are not from the South, from the southern part of the United States, think that Southern food is pretty interesting and is maybe something that they haven't eaten a lot of before. So Nashville is famously known for hot chicken, which is fried chicken and is then made really spicy. So there are a couple of famous restaurants. If you give a quick Google search of Nashville hot chicken, those will come up. So I would say, eating some food that maybe if you're not from the region is interesting to you, that would be my recommendation if you're going to Nashville for sure. Oh, and then definitely see some live music. Duh. That's live music everywhere. Even if you don't like country music, go see a country music show, even a small one. That's super fun.
Great suggestions. I love it. I haven't been to Nashville yet. I will go at some point, and I will definitely do those things.
Totally. Yeah, it's fun.
Where are you now?
I am in San Francisco right now. I've been here since February, and it is April right now, 2020. And I'm living and working with my sister, who has a tech startup here, which is very San Francisco.
Awesome. Do you like San Francisco?
I love San Francisco. I think it's so cool. You've been here before. You know how cool all the houses are and the apartments are. The hills are really cool, even though it sucks walking up the hill. Once you're at the top, there's usually like really cool views. And I've been trying to go to like as many parks as I can and just walk around different neighborhoods. So it's a super cool, fun, lively city.
Yeah, San Francisco is definitely, it's got to be in my top 5 favorite cities ever in the world.
Yeah.
So this is a podcast where I talk to people I've met while traveling. How did you and I meet?
I was in Bogota for a couple of weeks because I have some friends who live there. And then I knew I didn't really want to stay in the capital. It's a really, it's a big place, big, busy place. And I wanted to be somewhere that was a little bit quieter and smaller. So I was looking for stuff I could do basically in Colombia outside of the city. And then through some, I think, random Facebook posts somewhere, I found a website called Workaway. And Workaway is a website where people from all over the world, in many, many different countries, will post like job opportunities for people who are traveling and backpacking long term. I guess it's for any traveler. So there's like 1 week to 2 week things you can do up to like 6 months, a year, much longer term stuff. And it covers like a wide variety of things. Sometimes it's childcare, sometimes it's manual labor. A lot of times it's teaching English and anything in between. So I found a job posting through Workaway in a town called Villa, which is Villa space DE space Leyva. And it's about 4 hours north of Bogota. And they were advertising like an English teaching position at a place called Get On Institute. So it's 2 women who were running this institute. They were new, and they were looking for people who were traveling to pop into this institute, teach kids from this town English while they were there. So I have like a background in ESL, and I was like, all right, well, great. Like, this sounds like a great opportunity. I can practice Spanish while I'm doing this. So I was there for like 6 weeks. And in my last couple of weeks is when I met you. You were another teacher teaching English. And so I was teaching like teenagers. You were teaching usually like the younger kids.
Yep.
And that's how we met. Super fun. And there was like a group of us there at the time. So I think at most we had like 6 people, 6 volunteers teaching at a time. And then sometimes it went down to like 3 and it kind of fluctuates from there. So that's how we met.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, I remember meeting you was super cool because I think you're the only person I've ever met through a Workaway that actually had a background or works in what the Workaway was. Like, you have an ESL background, You were there, you had like learned to be a teacher already. The rest of us were kind of just winging it. So you were like a great help with the rest of us, and it was fun doing that with you.
Yeah, no, it was fun. I remember when you came, I think we were all like sitting on the floor because we had just
I remember that.
Swept and mopped, so the chairs were all to the side of the room, and we were like, it was kind of late at night. We were like sitting around, and that's when we were getting to know you, and it was super fun.
It was super fun. Yeah, awesome. So what kind of traveler do you consider yourself? From like novice, vacationer, nomad, solo. There's so many labels we use around travel. How do you like to describe yourself?
Yeah. I think that how I would describe myself has definitely changed a lot, and I think that it will probably continue to change. So like I was lucky enough growing up to go on like yearly vacations with my family. We would go to some pretty cool places. So I'd say growing up, I wasn't a traveler. I wasn't like living abroad. I wasn't doing anything like that, but I was going on these really interesting like week-long yearly vacations with my family. So I think, up until more recently, I would have considered myself not really a traveler, but someone who like went on cool vacations. But even then, I was like obsessed with going to new places. Like ever since I was a really little kid, I've just like been super curious about going to other places, whether that's internationally to other countries or just like seeing different parts of wherever I was living, like in Nashville or something like that. And that definitely was true for Boston when I was there for school. I like really, really was into seeing different neighborhoods that my school wasn't in. So I definitely have like this innate like urge and sense of like needing to see new places, and I have like a real curiosity around that. And so when you and I met in Colombia, that was really my first attempt at like sort of like a solo, slightly longer term travel experience. And I was there for 3 months, which, you and I both met people who were traveling for much longer than
Yeah.
that. Like during my time there in Colombia, I mean, I had met people who had traveled, had not been home for like more than 5 years. So people really definitely do this backpacking stuff really long term. And I think, maybe at some point I will do something a little bit longer term. So this 3 months was really just like getting my foot in the water. Is that the expression people use?
Yeah.
Trying it out for the first time, and seeing how that goes. And especially I was doing it by myself. I like landed, didn't really know what was going on. I like didn't have like secure housing for the whole time I was there. So it was definitely like a first solo thing. So back to your question of how would I label myself? I don't know. I think that I guess I would label myself as like a super curious person who likes traveling and who likes seeing, like, experiencing new places. As of right now, I wouldn't call myself like a backpacker, for example, right? Like I don't have like the huge Osprey backpack that I'll have on my back for 12 months going through Southeast Asia. That's like not where I'm at right now. But I have moved every 3 months, like basically this whole year. So in that sense, I am pretty transient and pretty nomadic.
Yeah.
And, like been sleeping on a lot of couches and blow up mattresses and stuff. But again, that's for right now. I don't think for like the next 10 years, I will be this nomadic.
Yeah. I like that you are a nomad in some way, that you are always kind of changing your life at this point in your life. But yeah, that's super cool. I like that. So we've already talked a little bit about what you do outside of travel, like what you work in, what you studied. What role does language play in travel for you?
Ooh, I love this question. So I have a degree in Spanish. I started taking my first Spanish classes when I was 14 in high school. And it's like such a like sappy love story. It's like after my first Spanish class, I was like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with this language. So I like have a deep, deep love for Spanish in particular. So I'm definitely like always really excited to go to a country or a place where Spanish is the spoken language. And that definitely played a huge role in my time in Colombia. I mean, I have some friends who were from there, so I would speak with them exclusively in Spanish. It's really interesting, right? Because like when I'm talking to people who are traveling, and again, I only really have the Colombia like frame of reference, but when I was there and I would talk to other travelers, that's definitely always in English, right? It's like really hard to get a group of English speakers together and like speak anything but English. It just like doesn't make sense a lot of the time. It's like not efficient. It's just everyone has to really be on board about like struggling through another language to like do that. So, when I was talking to other people, whether they were like American or Canadian or German or Australian or whatever, we all knew English. So like that was definitely what we were speaking. But if I was speaking with someone who was from Colombia or was like clearly a native Spanish speaker, I would definitely be speaking Spanish. But like Spanish aside, I like am super into trying to pick up other languages as best as I can. I mean, if you're in another country for like a week, I mean, you're not going to pick up on that much language for sure. But like, I love being around it, love hearing it, love seeing it on signs. If someone is patient enough with me to like teach me a couple phrases, that's great. I will absolutely try my best to use them. So I think that is like a true joy in traveling. Like for me, it is like hearing other languages and seeing people interact in other languages. I just like really love it and think it's really beautiful to see.
Following up on that, I'm really curious with this love of Spanish that you have. I know a lot of people who want to practice their Spanish or learn Spanish, they go to South America or Spain or something. But have you experienced any travel or just living within the United States where you've gotten to speak a lot of Spanish?
Yeah. So first of all, there's like a huge fear in speaking another language, which I totally get, right? So like, maybe you grew up in the United States or something. Maybe you took, a couple Spanish classes here and there in high school. You're probably like mortified to speak Spanish to a Spanish speaker. I absolutely get that. It's terrifying. So I think that like a nice part about traveling is if you're in another country, everyone is speaking this other language. If you want to like buy a bus ticket or something, you like got to use this other language. It's like a great way to do that. It's kind of a great way to like break down some of that fear and just like, you're like, all right, you know what? I gotta just do it. If you do that enough times, you become a little bit desensitized to that fear and you are just way more willing to try it. So, like, I've definitely seen that in my own experience where, I mean, I have a literal degree in Spanish, but was still, when I got to Colombia, was, like, petrified to speak Spanish.
Yeah.
Like, it's so hard. Like, even with my friends, I'm like, you know, people speak really fast. And it's like, you can't express what you want to say. It's super frustrating. It's, like, such a process. But, like, the more time I was there, every day you just, like, do a little bit more, force yourself to do it. And it really does become so much easier. And then I found that, you know, after I'd done that, when I came back to the United States, I did have, like, much less fear in using it here. So, like, I was in LA, like, a month or so ago with some friends. I was ordering food, and the guy who was, like, serving me, I thought maybe he was a Spanish speaker.
Yeah.
And so I asked him in Spanish, like, I think I asked him where he was from or what his name was or something like that. And then we proceeded, like, the rest of, to speak in Spanish for the rest of that interaction. And that is something I never would have done, probably before I was in Colombia. Like, you know, my mom does the classic, like, really embarrassing parent thing where we're, like, at a Mexican restaurant. She's like, Olivia, order in Spanish. I'm like, literally, I'm not doing that. That's all. Like, no, I'm not doing that. Right. So I would never have done that. But I think after, like, spending 3 months in Colombia where there were times where it was just like, I was, like, grasping at straws trying to communicate and it still worked out.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that, like, it's fine. And, like, trying is always a good thing. So now I'm, like, much more willing to use Spanish in the United States, which is cool. That's, like, something I guess I didn't really expect, but is really fun.
I love that. I haven't actually had a chance to, like, use my Spanish courage skills yet in the US.
Yeah.
But I totally agree with that. I think being completely immersed really forces you to get over that fear. So this next portion is called Around the World in 20 Questions. Number 1, plan it or wing it?
Wing it.
Solo travel or group travel?
Solo.
Heavy packer or light packer?
Light all day, every day.
Beach or mountains?
Beach, maybe, but that's a hard one.
That's a hard question.
Yeah.
Desert or rainforest?
Desert.
Cities or nature?
Nature.
Favorite? Okay, this is maybe one of the hardest questions you'll ever get asked, but what is one of your favorite foods from travel?
Well, the first thing that came to mind were empanadas from Buenos Aires.
Where do you get your empanadas when you've been to Buenos Aires?
Oh, there's a place called Ñao Serapia. I think it's spelled, I don't know how the first word is spelled. There's, like, a tilde over the N. Ña Serapia, maybe. I think it's N-A and then Serapia. It's, like, I think it's pretty famous. So if you Google it, it'll come up. But it's, like, this really tiny place in Buenos Aires. And the empanadas were just, like, amazing. So good. I was there not that long ago, and I think I went there, like, almost every day.
What is your favorite beverage that you've encountered while traveling?
The first thing that came to mind was, like, maybe some cool wheat beers in, like, Berlin.
No, that's
great.
Wait.
Okay, that is great, but also all of the juices in Colombia, obviously. So, like, maracuja, like, juice, amazing. Like, that's what you want for sure.
What is the longest flight or transit you've had?
I had a flight from Boston to Singapore with a stop in Abu Dhabi, and both of those legs were very, very long.
On a plane, would you rather sit next to a really smelly person or a crying baby?
Probably smelly. I would get acclimated to the smell.
If your travels were a movie, what genre would it be?
Definitely, like, a coming-of-age teenage film with, like, some dramatic scenes. Like, absolutely.
I love that, yes.
Yeah.
For the gram or for the fam?
Definitely to the fam. Yeah, I don't have a super robust Instagram account, so definitely, like, pictures to the fam, for sure.
Skydiving or scuba diving?
Scuba.
What is the coolest historical thing you've seen?
After my freshman year of college, I took, like, a summer study abroad in Madrid, and I took this really cool Spanish art history class where part of the class was that we went to the Reina Sofia and the Prado to, like, present on artwork that we had studied with the artwork in person, which was, like, pretty incredible.
We love experiential education.
Oh, we love it. Absolutely.
Liberal arts. Awesome. Would you rather have a hot one-night stand or a week-long travel romance that fizzles out?
Week long. I get attached. Yeah.
Anywhere you've traveled in the world, where would you take a date?
Yeah, I don't know what counts as traveling again, but, like, I would probably go somewhere in Boston, right? Because that's like what I know best, and like as exciting and like crazy as it would be to like, you know, be in some foreign city and do something really cool. Like actually, for me, I would probably prefer like doing something where I like feel really like, I don't know, at home.
Do you have any place that came to mind first, or just like Boston?
There's like if the listeners out there are familiar with the Boston area, there's so Down East is a cider that's actually, you know, it's made in East Boston, and it's on, I don't really know what you call it, like maybe an old shipyard perhaps is the right word for it, but there's some like cool art installations there. You have the Down East brewery where you can like take a tour of it, so it's like super fun. I've taken my mom there, if that counts as a fun date.
Fun date.
She visited, so.
Walking tour or going rogue?
I love a good walking tour, actually. You get so much information, so walking tour.
What is one essential thing you always pack other than your passport, your phone?
Earplugs. Always. I have to sleep with earplugs, so gotta have those.
So this next question I found on Condé Nast Traveler, the 10 most visited cities of 2019. And I'm just going to list them, and if you could say if you've been there and if you recommend it. Top 10 most visited cities of 2019. Number 1 is Bangkok.
No.
Paris?
No.
London?
No.
Dubai?
No.
Singapore?
Yes.
Would you recommend it?
Yeah. Oh man, Singapore was so cool. I went in June, which was incredibly hot and humid. Probably I think that's actually the hottest place I've ever been. But like had some super cool food while I was there. I like ate a bunch of stuff I'd never eaten before. We went on like some really cool like personal tours. That I was with my sister and her husband. We went on like some really interesting like personalized tours there, and it was fascinating, like super interesting if you want to talk like culture. And like different groups coming together for sure.
The next one is Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.
No.
New York?
Yes, I have been to New York. Honestly though, I haven't been in a really long time, and I think I've only been like twice for pretty short legs. So that's actually on like my short list of places I want to go like in the near future.
Nice. Would you recommend it from
what
you've seen?
Yeah, I think here's the way I think about New York is that I want to visit New York with someone who knows it very well, and like with someone who maybe even just like knows a certain neighborhood really well. That's like how I want to experience New York, is with someone who can like take me to cool spots, because if you don't have someone, it's like really overwhelming.
Istanbul?
No.
Tokyo?
No.
And the final one is Antalya, Turkey.
No, I'm not.
Did the list surprise you at all?
No, I mean those are all like really major cities. It's actually like, it's kind of funny. So like the first like entry points into Europe specifically that like people always go to, so like London, Paris, those are like the places I really have not been. I feel like I've maybe, because actually a lot of my travel, especially within the past couple of years, has been to see specific people that I know. It's taken me to places that are a little bit like less common, or just like a little bit like not a major capital city. So I'm not surprised about the list, and I'm also not surprised that I have not been to a lot of the places on the list.
If you could live anywhere in the world and money wasn't an issue, where would you live?
Right now, or at least within the next like couple of years, I would love to live in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I've been there twice. I just like, I don't know. Sometimes you will like go to a place and you're just like, you vibe with it and you're like, oh, I like, this is my place. That's like how I feel with that city. I just like, both times I've been there, just fit in so well, have like felt so comfortable and just loved it.
Travel is kind of a word that encompasses a lot of things. For some people, it's spring break, or that they're 2 weeks off from work. And for some people, like you said earlier, they haven't been home in 5 years, you know. What role does travel play in your life, and what impact has it had on you as a person?
So, like I said earlier, I was like really lucky to be exposed to traveling at a really young age. So I traveled a lot with my family growing up. And I think, so for me, it's been like a pretty integral part actually of my like life. It's always been something I've done. And I have, because of that, I think, and because I started at such a young age, like I think I was on an airplane when I was like 6 months old. So I've always felt really comfortable doing it. And I think that it's had huge impacts on me and has formed a lot of parts of who I am, specifically in just like in what I've learned. Anyone who has done, not even traveling, just any sort of like experiential thing like that, you'll find that you can learn so much more doing something like that than you can in a classroom or in any other way. So yeah, I think I've learned a ton. I mean, you know, I've learned a lot about myself and, you know, how to interact with other people, but also just like things that I normally wouldn't be able to learn. Like, for example, when I was in high school, my family and I and some of my sister's like coworkers, we went on a safari in Tanzania, which is, it sounds, I don't know, sounds kind of crazy, but like we went on the safari and it was like amazing. Like, I saw all of these animals in the wild that I never would have been able to see before. And we were with the same 3 guides the entire like 10 days. So I was, you know, like 16 years old and was like, oh my God, I want to be best friends with them. Yeah. So I spent like a ton of time with these 3 guys and we ended up creating like this really, really cool friendship. And they just like, they taught me so much stuff about these different, like how to identify an impala versus like a gazelle and all like this like actual just factual information that, yeah, I could have like read about in a textbook or whatever, but like, what the heck? I was like looking at it through binoculars. That's like amazing. So, yeah, I think, and I've had actually been lucky enough to have a handful of experiences like that where we were like with scientists or with people doing like really specific work in another part of the world, and I was able to learn about that. And that's or like another example that just came to mind is like my sister and I went to Jerusalem. She was speaking at a conference in Tel Aviv, and I went with her, and then we spent a couple of days in Jerusalem. And when I'm traveling with my sister, we can do like private tours, which is very, very exciting and pretty lush. But we basically within those couple of tours, which, you know, were several hours each, we got like a crash course in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, and also just like a crash course in the history of Jerusalem, which is like,
what a place to
my
learn
brain
that
was
stuff.
like sore by the end of it. But yeah, it's like incredible. You can like see the places in person where these things were happening. It's like, yeah. So I think just from like a learning perspective, that's like traveling has been like where I have learned the most.
Is there anything you've learned about yourself as a person?
I mean, so recently when I was in Colombia for 3 months, I think I definitely learned that I think that there's like a narrative around traveling by yourself where it's like, oh, you know, it's hard to travel by yourself. I think especially like women traveling by themselves have a specific set of things that they have to deal with. And so there's kind of this like romanticized narrative that's like, you know, it takes a lot of grit to travel by yourself. And it's like, you're overcoming all these obstacles. And like by the end of it, you're like really tough and really cool. And you like backpack by yourself. Like, that's great. And I think that like there are tons of benefits to doing it by yourself. But also I think I learned that I like being with my friends and I like doing stuff with other people. Like I'm definitely extroverted. If I'm like doing or seeing something really cool, the first thing I want to do is like share it with someone else. Like I find like basically all of the value of an experience lies in doing it with someone else.
Sure.
So I am not someone who wants to like go climb mountains or like see all of these great things and like just do that by myself. Like, it just, to me, like if I'm not doing it with someone else, it like doesn't matter. Which I think there are other people who fall so far on the other end of the spectrum on that. They love doing things by themselves, and that gives them so much, you know, energy and confidence in everything. So that was, and that's a great thing to learn about myself, honestly. Like, that's something that if you don't do it and you don't try it, it's like you don't really know. So that's like an invaluable thing that I learned about myself pretty recently.
Yeah, and I think some people have a hard time owning that too, and being like, yeah, I am a little bit, not necessarily dependent, but that's just something that makes you more comfortable when you travel, is not being by yourself all the time. How do you decide, I guess you mentioned this a little bit already, but how do you decide where to travel?
I mean, so throughout my college, I went to a lot of cool places, and that was totally because my sister was speaking internationally, basically like every month at the time. So I could just piggyback off on her and go on all these trips with her.
That's
super
and, like,
that
nice,
was really amazing, and was just like super lucky, and like was the situation. So, so that determined where you're traveling, like whatever conference she was speaking at, that's where we would go. So that took me to a bunch of really cool places. Since then, knowing people who live or are from that place, I've found to be like really, really fun. It's one thing to go to a city in another country and explore it on your own. It is a very different thing to go to a city where you have a friend there who can show you around. So I think I'm at a point where I'm much more interested in going to places where I have some sort of connection with a person there who I can stay with and who can show me around and we can have a lot of fun, versus me trying to
pulling out the guidebook.
It's still, I mean, it's always fun. It's always a good time, but it's definitely more, I think, extra special if you have someone there who knows it well and who can show you around.
Do you end up staying with your friends when you go places? And do you have any like money saving tips similar to staying with people you know?
Yeah, so I definitely would recommend staying with friends as much as you possibly can, both from a money perspective and just from like a social, almost like wellness being. I think that's like really amazing. So like when I got to Colombia, I had some friends there, but they all live in apartments with their parents and families, and just like did not have any space for me to stay, which was totally understandable and totally fine. So when I got there, the first week, or maybe the first 2 weeks actually, I was staying in a hotel actually, which is like pretty surprising because, you know, most 23-year-olds, you would definitely stay in like a youth hostel or something like that. But my mom and my brother had actually been to Bogota the year before, and had stayed at this like random hotel, and we're like, look, we stayed here. We can like, we know that it is safe, so here's where you should stay. So, and you know, it was relatively, it was pretty affordable, but that was like awful. Like I would absolutely not do that again. Being by yourself in a room in a city, like where you're like spending, like in my case, I was spending the entire day by myself, right? So I would like wake up, I'm like sleeping in this room by myself. I wake up and then I'm like spending the entire day trying to explore the city, like by myself. As I mentioned in the previous question, I'm like super, I love doing stuff with other people. I'm like very extroverted. So that kind of setup just like does not work for me at all. And I get much less enjoyment out of in that kind of situation. So if I could do it over again, I would have just started off in a hostel for sure, right? Hostels are like very social places by nature. People are always looking for other people to like hang out with and see stuff together. So I think my first couple of weeks in Colombia would have looked very different if I had just started off in a hostel. You know, hostels definitely cheaper than a hotel. Stay in a hostel. Friends are cheaper than a hostel. Stay with a friend. It's more fun and it's cheaper. And then, I mean, I honestly, I spend way less money abroad than I do in the US probably. I would have to like do some math and write it down and convert whatnot. But like on, you know, basically my only expenses when I'm in another country are if I'm paying for a place to sleep and food during the day, and maybe some transportation, depending on if the city's walkable or not. I'm like not a huge like souvenir buyer. I like don't shop. I mean, I bring like a backpack most of the time when I'm somewhere else, so I'm not shopping for clothes. Like I'm not doing any of that. I'm really not buying anything because I won't have room for it when I want to fly home. So I'm just paying for somewhere to sleep and somewhere to eat. And then, you know, I've also just like gone to places where, things are more affordable. So
cost of living is lower.
Yeah. So like the 3 months that I was in Colombia, I spent like less money than, I don't know, much less time in a place like Boston, you know, if I was like staying somewhere in Boston and eating in Boston. So yeah, you know, everyone like does this stuff with their own budget, right? It's like super important to know what kind of budget you're on when you're doing things like this. And I've seen people who plan a ton and have like a daily budget, and you know, it's all super worked out. That's probably an excellent idea. I have not been that strict about it, but that's a great idea. Definitely something I probably should do. I mean, but I've also honestly found that like people who are especially traveling for a long time, they were like really financially secure to start with. I've met very few people who are backpacking through Europe or South America or whatever who could not like, you know, call like a family member, probably a parent, if they were in a bind to get a flight ticket home. So I don't want to like paint like an inaccurate picture, which is like, you know, you can like, you know, I don't know. Like I think people can definitely manage to travel on a very, very low budget. But I will say that in my experience, I have not met really a lot of people doing that.
That's true. I've experienced that too, where a lot of people I know, either they have a lot of savings or they do have someone they can call. So that's absolutely true. Do you have any safety tips?
Oh, yeah.
I know you've been to a lot of different regions of the world. Are there different safety precautions you take?
Honestly, the only time that I really like was actively thinking about safety was the time that like I was by myself. So I think that probably speaks a lot to this. Like when I'm with other people, I generally feel really, really safe wherever I am. because it's like a safety in numbers thing. So, but in the times that I was by myself, and thought that I needed to, be kind of alert about that, it was things like, not walking around by myself at night, like knowing where I'm going before I leave where I am, having like, so I look like I'm walking with purpose and I don't look super lost. In places where like petty theft was commonly like a thing that people warned against, I would like not whip out my iPhone on the street. And I will say that I think that if you're going to go to a place where that has some sort of reputation for being unsafe, I would be super, super careful about letting those perceptions really get into your head. I think that I like fought against those perceptions so much when I told people that I was going to Colombia. And even then it still was like really, really in my mind. Like before I left for Colombia, like basically every person I told, like the first thing they said was like, okay, you need to be really safe. Like, oh, there are drugs there. Oh, it's just like all the things you'll hear. And I would tell people that was like, I really like fought against that. I was like, no, like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's racist, or like, and so I fought against that a lot. But yeah, I still, there's like sort of a fine balance in like being realistic about, the potential like dangers of a place, and then not having it be so, dramatic, not so like exaggerated. And yeah. So it's like a weird balance to find, but I found that even in trying to be really realistic and like fighting some of those stereotypes, it still definitely got in my head.
My next question is about mental health, because I experience a lot of mental health ups and downs while I'm traveling. Do you have do you ever encounter problems with your mental health when you're traveling, and what keeps you going if you do?
Yeah, so I'm definitely, I can get pretty anxious. And luckily though, before I started like doing some of this traveling stuff by myself, I had been through lots and lots of therapy. So I had actually developed a lot of skills and just like knowledge about myself and how to kind of react to that and work with that. And I will say that like, I think that traveling can be like a really wonderful way to like try to work through whatever sort of things you're trying to work through. Especially, so like, again, for me, I can get pretty anxious, but it's weird. I get anxious in a kind of an atypical sense, where I think a lot of situations that would cause like a lot of anxiety for a lot of people are actually not the situations that I get anxious in. It's like kind of a weird reverse thing. And so like if you take traveling, for example, especially if you're doing like a longer term kind of backpacking situation, like the norm is like last minute changes, is like having to be super flexible about what you're doing and where you're staying, right? Like all of these things are changing and moving all of the time. And there's like a lot of times not a lot of like constant. And so I think that kind of lifestyle for a long time would understandably make a lot of people really anxious. And so I think that if that's like something you kind of want to work on or feeling out, actually traveling could be, with the right resources and sort of when you're ready and can do that, is like a really like great way to sort of work on that. So like, there was like some points in time in the fall where I like didn't know where I was going to stay next, or like didn't know, when I was going to go home, or like didn't know some of the next steps. But I think that like for me, even just like a quick call home can really put a lot of those feelings at ease. Like, I'm lucky that I'm really close with my mom, so I can like get on the phone with my mom and be like, bro, I like don't know what I'm doing. What am I gonna do next? Da 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 da.
Do you call your mom, like, bro?
Oh, totally. Oh yeah. But and just like even hearing a reassuring voice from home, being like,
yeah,
it's okay. Like, you'll figure out the next thing to do. If things like don't work out or whatever, we have a backup plan. Just any sort of like kind of mom reassurance, whatever. I call my friends a lot. So I think for me, just like any sort of experience I can have that like pulls me out of that like feeling a little bit and can like remind me that I'm like really fortunate and have lots of options, usually is really good for me and can get me feeling a lot better.
I was having a few days in Bogota before I left for Chile where I was having a lot of anxiety and a lot of panic. And actually calling my mom was the best thing that I did. It really calmed me down. Yeah. And it didn't really... completely give me answers of what I should do next, but it at least gets you into that mindset where you can make a plan of what to do next.
Totally. And I think maybe also, like, you know, when you're traveling, you're likely surrounded by people who don't really know you that well yet. So I think sometimes talking to someone who, like, does know you really well and, like, you know, I think that can be really helpful when you're, like, especially trying to make some of these decisions of what you're going to do or just trying to figure out how you're feeling. I think that talking to someone who knows you and kind of knows the like how you've gotten to that point is pretty helpful to talk to.
This is kind of a big one, but what are some of the most significant cultural differences you've experienced?
I've experienced some pretty interesting things, like in regards to gender. I've been to some places where there was like really, really clear roles for women and men. And sometimes even to an extent where like there was like physical separation between men and women. And I think that felt pretty different. You know, obviously we have, you know, tons of gender roles here and that's nothing new to the United States. But there is actually a ton of freedom in gender expression here in the United States, right? Like, I mean, I can go on a rant about this, but you know, I mean, actually, relative to lots of places, the United States is a really great place to be, to like defy a lot of gender roles and do a lot of things with that. So yeah, places where like women just straight up couldn't do certain things, I think is a pretty big difference and interesting to think about. And I always, when I am in those situations, I always wonder what maybe like someone like me would do if I had grown up in that place, or even like, you know, there have been so many times where I'll like be in a place where maybe gender or norms about sexuality are different, and I'm like, man, what are all the gay kids doing here? Like, what are they up to? Yeah. So that's something I definitely think about a lot when I'm, you know, in a place that has some different norms in the United States.
If you ever encounter like a feeling of discomfort just because the culture is different, how do you work through that as you're traveling?
Yeah. Well, I'm like a huge talker, if that has not become clear. So like I'm a super like external verbal processor. So whenever I experience anything that's like cool or confusing or feels really different or anything like that, my first thing is to like talk to someone about it. So whether that's the person I'm traveling with or a call home or whatever, I'm like, okay, here's what I just saw, like, or here's, you know, what feels really different. And just like saying stuff out loud, hearing the other person respond to it, and then going from there, usually is where like all of my like thinking and connections happen.
What is your biggest lesson or takeaway from travel?
You know, this is really getting into the realm of cliche answers, but like it really, I think it's a cliche because it is really true that like people are like really, really the same, like everywhere. Like they really are. Like if you see like a 10-year-old boy in any country, anywhere, he's like basically doing the same thing, right? Or like people like want to do the same thing always. They want to like hang out with their friends. They want to like laugh. They want to eat good food. They want to see like cool landscapes. Like this is just like a thing that everyone wants to do. So, and I think that just, if you start to see these same like behaviors and wants, so many times in so many different places, it is really hard to ignore the fact, that everyone's like kind of the same. So, you know, of course there's like tons of caveats with that, and, you know, you can like dissect it as much as you want and talk about cultural differences and values and whatever. That's great. I think that's a great conversation. But also I think at the end of the day, people, like, no matter what culture or country or place you grew up in, you actually do have like, everyone does really have like the same basic, you know, values and things that they want and love. So that's a great thing to know. That's a huge piece of wisdom, you know, to know. I mean, at the young age of 23 to,
I was gonna say, you're so young to be so wise.
I know. I definitely don't claim to be wise, but it is, you know, it's all like privilege and luck and good fortune that I've been able to see a lot of different places and be able to talk to people from all these places. And it's once you do that, and through that, if you get the chance, that's like when you do start to realize some of this stuff. So it's great.
Is travel for everyone?
Oh yeah, I can say that with a lot of confidence. You know, yeah. And again, I think like travel can be anything, right? Like you do not have to get on an airplane and go somewhere super far away with your Osprey backpack and stay in a hostel for 6 months to like call it traveling, right? No. Like, it's, you know, at some point the word travel, like, I don't know. Sometimes I kind of just want to like chuck it out the window and be like, no, it's really just about like seeing somewhere new, right? Like seeing somewhere new and like experiencing that with people, like new people. And that can be, you can do that. If that's the definition you want to work with, you can do that literally anywhere. You can do that in the city you're currently living in. Yeah. You can do it across the border. You can do it in another state. You can do it on the other side of the world. You can do that anywhere. So in that sense, it is absolutely for everyone, right? It sucks that like to do that really like, you know, dramatic long distance movie-esque stuff. Yeah, like that's like not an option for a lot of people. It's really expensive. Takes like there's a ton of factors that have to line up for that to happen. Great when it does, but also like if like those factors aren't lining up for you right now, that's fine. Like you can still get that kind of experience in like lots of different ways. And I think that everyone should, and I think that that's like if everyone could just like experience the joy that comes with like seeing a new place and meeting new people and all that, that's like something that everyone really deserves. And I really hope for everyone. So for sure, travel's for everyone.
Okay, where are you going next when we are in the middle of a pandemic? No one is allowed to go anywhere right now.
I know. I didn't know if I should mention that, but yes,
it's okay.
we are in a pandemic.
We gotta acknowledge the realities of the world.
And honestly, like now is a time to be like extra thankful for any traveling you've been able to do, right? Once that is taken away from you and it's no longer an option, you're like even more like, oh man, like that is so cool that I can do that, you know, at some point I have been able to do that. So yes, I am quarantined in an apartment in San Francisco, but when that is over, I actually have been planning a 5-week-long road trip in the United States. I've been planning this for months. It's very well
I think you mentioned it when we were in Colombia. Yeah.
It's like, I'm so into this. I will talk at anyone's ear off about it. But basically, I'm leaving from Nashville, going up to Boston, meeting some friends, or a friend who is from Maine. So I'll probably actually just go all the way to Maine, meet her. And then we're doing a huge loop where I'm going to a bunch of national parks in Colorado, Utah, actually part of southern Canada. Sneaking back through South Dakota. So it's this like very elaborate, amazing camping national park road trip situation that I've been cooking up. So I'm so excited about that. I like have never been to national parks like that. I've never been camping. So this is going to be a super lovely time for me to learn a lot of new skills. And it's a part of the country I've never been to before. I've never been to the Rocky Mountains. New place for me, definitely new landscape. And I'm so excited for it whenever that does happen, when the pandemic is over.
Well, yeah. We're all of our travel plans are on pause right now. So, but once it opens up, we're all going to get going.
Totally.
Where do you recommend people to travel? Like if you could pick one place in the world, you're like, you have to see this in your lifetime.
I'm definitely thinking about maybe like people from the United States. Like kind of that perspective, the American perspective. My recommendation for someone who is maybe a little bit newer to traveling or is maybe like a little nervous or something like that, I would recommend going to Berlin. My best friend from high school lived in Berlin has actually lived there off and on for the past couple of years. And so I've been able to visit her a couple of times. It's like a super, super cool city, a lot to do, but also just has like a really cool kind of like punk, grungy energy that I'm like obsessed with. And I think that's a great like maybe intro trip for a lot of people, because if you're an English speaker, you'll get along just fine. It's like fascinating. If you're like a history person, you're going to be into it. If you're a cultural person, you're going to be into it. So yeah, I think that would be maybe a recommendation I would have.
That's an awesome recommendation. Yeah, and I like that you acknowledged like a beginner traveler kind of perspective. Is there anything you want to share as far as where people can find? Do you have any like a blog or Instagram or anything that you want to share?
Yeah, my Instagram presence is not huge, but you can find me on Instagram at O_McKellar. That's McKellar. Yeah, I will post from time to time when I'm in a new place and see something really cool. So yeah, and I'm also always open to like hear what people are up to. And so if you ever want to DM me or anything like that, usually pretty happy to chat.
Awesome. And I hope we'll get to see your road trip when you go on.
Oh, yes. There will definitely be a lot of Instagram action for that, for sure.
Olivia, thank you so much for being here. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you so much. Good luck with all this. This is amazing. This is so fun. It's so fun to talk about, and it's going to be super fun to listen to.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Friendly Faces, Amazing Places. If you'd like to see pictures from my guests' travels, go ahead and check out our Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube channels. And if you want to stay up to date on future upcoming episodes, please follow and subscribe.